welcome to Lung Cancer Living Room, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. This is our first living room coming from Memphis, and we are so happy to be here. Thank all of you for being in the room and those of you signing in online. We're excited about tonight for a multitude of reasons, but one, to talk about lung cancer care in the community setting and why it's so important that we work to improve standards there, given that 80+% of patients are seen in this type of environment. So I've got an expert panel here to talk about some of the things we're doing, to talk about what good looks like. So before we move into the topic, this is something new I've started to do at the living room because I feel like panelists can introduce themselves way better than I can reading a bio from a piece of paper. And what I'd like to do is have everybody say who they are, what they do, and why lung cancer is important to you. So Dr. O, do you want to start?
So I'm Ray Osaragagmo. I'm the infamous Dr. O. I am a thoracic oncologist, very interested in lung cancer, and I'm a foot soldier in Gina's army, as you can see from my shirt.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Leah Fine. I'm the director of the Centers of Excellence program at the Ajario Lung Cancer Foundation. So I lead a program around building expert multidisciplinary teams and hospitals and standard of care all across the country through community hospitals. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about that tonight.
I'm Gina Hollenbeck. I'm a lung cancer survivor and warrior and a patient of Dr. O's.
So I think one of the things you guys will find out as we have this conversation today is that lung cancer is a very complex disease. And in the community setting, particularly one that doesn't have the benefit of a larger cancer center like Baptist, where Dr. O is, but particularly in the more rural settings, the doctors, they're treating whatever walks in the door, right? So, between solid tumor and blood cancers, there's 100+ different types of cancers. So, the expectation that any one human being can know everything there is to know about all of that, I think is unrealistic. So at the foundation, one of the things we're hoping to be able to do with the COE program, and you'll hear about it, is to help facilitate that knowledge, right, through the program and what we're doing, and through the physicians who are able to spend the time working specifically in this space, and how they may be able to help other doctors be able to gain the knowledge that they need in order to treat the lung cancer patients. So with that, we're going to jump into a little bit of what is the Center of Excellence program. What does it look like, and why was it developed, although I kind of gave away a little bit of that.
All right. Well, thank you, Gina, for your amazing story. And it just validates everything that we believe in when we think about what a Center of Excellence can do for patients. The Centers of Excellence program was started because 80% of cancer patients actually receive care in their own community setting. They often don't have access, perhaps like what you had, where to go to an MD Anderson or Dana-Farber or a leading academic center. And so most people really do rely on their very own, if you will, community neighborhood hospital. And we believe, because of that high demand, that there should be a standard of care and consistency of care across all community hospitals. And that's really what the COE program really strives for. So at the core or the heart of the Center of Excellence program is this notion of a multidisciplinary team, which sounds a lot like what Gina encountered with Dr. O and his team, is that cancer is sufficiently complex that it doesn't really, you can't have just one person treating and knowing it all. You need really a group of experts to be able to quickly diagnose and triage the situation and help to develop a treatment plan that involves a lot of different steps. In Gina's case, and in many patients' cases, you have to look a little bit deeper. You do the histology and understand what type of cancer it is, but then you have to look deeper beyond that, and that's where a lot of the molecular testing comes in. And so all of our centers of excellence have standardized practices around molecular testing to look for all of those, common and not so common biomarkers, and in many cases to send that biomarker or that tissue test out to get biomarker testing done through something called next generation sequencing, which looks at a lot of different biomarkers simultaneously. So we look across, our multidisciplinary teams, and we look for those best practices. And so the Centers of Excellence program identifies those hospitals that are delivering the highest quality of care from very early stage diagnosis. So all of our programs have low-dose CT screening programs to capture early stage. They also have the lung nodule clinics, which help to identify, if you will, incidental findings and sufficiently triage those for notice or alert. And then all the way up through late stage diagnosis, so that the vast majority of patients are reviewed by a tumor board or a multidisciplinary team and are evaluated for molecular testing. They're often evaluated for clinical trials. And so we're trying to standardize those best practices across an entire network of community hospitals.
Thanks, Leah. So with that, and we'll dig a little deeper into how we're doing that in a second, but I want Dr. O to talk a little bit about what implementing these standards look like in the community setting, beginning with screening and early detection and running through the...
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. If you walked out on the street and said lung cancer, what's the first impression you get in people's mind? It's death, I think. In fact, the word cancer already packs a punch. You add lung before you say cancer, and everybody's ready to just flee. And the statistics bear that out. So if you look at all the cancers that we diagnose in the United States every year, it's about 15% of them that are lung cancer. But if you look at the causes of death, it rises suddenly to 26%. So it's a big deal. We lose more Americans every year to lung cancer than to breast cancer, colon cancer, rectal cancer, and throw in pancreas cancer if you want, So yes, it's a very well-earned notoriety. But as complex as it is, there are now certain things that we can talk about, the pathway forward. If you look at the population, if you just look at the population out there in the United States or across the world and say, okay, what is our biggest opportunity to make a difference? There's this broad-based pyramid, okay? At the base of it is prevention, of course, right? Everybody knows that. So how can you prevent lung cancer? Because the majority of people who get lung cancer are people who at one time in the past, unlike Gina's case, smoked. Preventing people from smoking and getting those who have already smoked to quit is a huge opportunity we have. But when you get past that, the really exciting part of it is that in the last 10 years or so, we now know that a certain type of CT scan, a low-dose CT scan, which is not much more than what you get when you do a chest X-ray, actually saves lives. If you get people who are at risk for lung cancer because of how old they are and how much they've smoked in the past, to do that test. So one of the opportunities we have is to increase the percentage of people who, there are about 8 million Americans out there who would qualify for screening, and it's only about 3% of them who have ever had a screening test. 3%. That's 3. So if you could push that up closer to 100%, you have this huge opportunity.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's so important, and Gina touched on another thing that kind of falls into this same space and conversation, which is your initial conversation with Dr. O, and he spent 2 hours with you explaining all of this and having what is now sort of the buzz sort of term for it is shared decision making, and really talking to patients about what their goals of care are and what that might look like, right? And it's so important as also part of what good looks like. To be talking a little bit about that. And I know some of you might know this and some of you might not. So my sort of step into lung cancer was when my mom was diagnosed in 2003. And my mom happens to be Bonnie of the foundation. So ever since 2003, I dug my heels in, and I haven't looked back. And really surrounding myself with everything lung cancer and figuring out what this looks like and how we can use this knowledge and what we do at the foundation to help other people. And all the things that we're talking about today were not things that were available in 2003. She was given 0 options from several different doctors, and we put together our own multi-D team from several different places, academic and community, and she's still here today. So I think it's so important that you guys are hearing what the good looks like and all of these different sort of spokes on the wheel that kind of create that and get that wheel in motion. So how does a COE become a COE? How do they get a designation from, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, and we'll probably.
Sure. So we are in contact with a number of different hospitals and physicians, and we meet physicians through many sources, through referrals from our current physicians, through industry referrals. And essentially we find what might be a COE champion. And a lot of people ask me when I look across our 20 plus COEs, they're like, oh, well, what profile is your COE champion? What title do they have? And to be honest, they have all different titles, and it's really someone who is passionate and dedicated and understands the value of that multidisciplinary team effort. And in many cases, we have amazing nurse navigators like Kim Parham and Christy, who are, Kim was a nurse navigator at one of our sites, and Christy's one now. We have, medical oncologists. In many cases, we have interventional pulmonologists, who are the ones who do the navigational bronchoscopies that Gina spoke about. And so oftentimes the COE champion, or the person really carrying the flag, can take on many different roles or titles. But what is sort of the unifying message is that they really all understand the value of coordinated care, and they've seen the value to patients of coordinated care. And that's really the crux of what we need to start the conversation around, is this hospital and this team really ready to become a COE? What we've done over the past couple of years is really develop what we call the COE qualifying criteria worksheet, which is a list of, what does good look like? What are the minimums to have? What are the nice to have? And to really start that conversation with these multidisciplinary teams to understand where they are and what are their aspirations for their lung or thoracic oncology program. So we go through, discussions and assessments of where they are. And we start to really identify what are the pieces they have in place today and where do they hope to get to. So it is a process. Some people can check the boxes right off the bat, and we can designate them as a center of excellence. I'm actually on the road in the next couple of days to add on one of our newest COEs at Norton in Louisville, Kentucky. And they could just walk through the list and yep, we're doing all of these. And then some others, they're saying, we don't quite yet have the nurse navigator in process, or we just instituted our, low-dose CT scanning program, a year ago, so we don't really have a lot of experience with it. So we just, we keep that dialogue open. We understand where they are and how we can be helpful at that point in time.
And how do we sort of track what's happening at that hospital to ensure that what they're saying is happening is happening?
Sure. So initially, we go through that process of going through our worksheet or our checklist to understand what are the pieces that they have in place. One of the projects that I've instituted, which Dr. O has been very involved with, is something that we call our COE impact study. And basically what it is, it's an annual review by which we can collect data out of each of our COEs that really cover the entire lung cancer care continuum. So what we try to aim for is, within this survey tool, is to, one, understand what patient population they're providing service to. So we ask a lot of questions about patient demographics, whether that's the age range or the stage at which they were found, or ethnicity, insurance mix, how far they have to travel. So we can get an understanding of, what does that patient population look like? We have hospitals all over the country. So we have some in more urban settings versus rural settings versus Southern California versus right outside of New York City. So we have a pretty wide variety of locations. And so we ask questions that tell us a little bit about that patient population. We also then ask questions that really cover the entire lung cancer care continuum from that early, screening and lung nodule phase through early stage diagnosis and treatment, all the way through late stage diagnosis and treatment. We also ask about, goals of care discussions, palliative care discussions. So we ask a lot of information about, how is care delivered, and we try to capture both what I call quantitative information as well as qualitative information. So not just how much or how often, but the why behind it.
So why, and Dr. I'm going to ask you this question. Is there anything unique about this sort of data set, or why is gathering this information important?
Yeah. So quality improvement is impossible without data. If you ask everybody how they're doing, everybody will probably believe that they're doing great. But we know that it's always a spectrum, and we know that that spectrum is broad, but we know that the height of the spectrum is not nearly as high as it needs to be. We could all improve. I don't care whether you're MD Anderson, Dana-Farber, or Baptist, or somewhere in Muleshoe, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, or anywhere else. We all can improve. If you just take a condition with an aggregate, all comers mashed together, 5-year survival of 18%, we have 82% room to improve until we get to 100%. So we can all improve. We could all use quality improvement. But quality improvement is impossible if you don't have data. You have to measure, and measure again, okay? This is where we were to begin with. How do we know? Because we gathered all this critical information, we put it together, we counted it, added it, multiplied it, divided it, subtracted it, and we came up with a number. And the number is for real because we've kicked it around, looked at it upside down, sideways, and we think it links towards the direction we want to go. So we want this number to go from where it is now to keep rising or falling, depending on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So what number, for example, would we like to see? We would like to see the aggregate 5-year survival of lung cancer go from 18% to 100%. You say, well, gee, is that possible? Well, breast cancer is at over 90% now. It's possible. We just haven't done the work it takes to do it. So you have to measure. And you can't just go around measuring anything that moves, of course. You have to figure out the things to measure that are important. And sometimes you start out thinking this is the one, and then as you go on, you find, well, maybe not. There's a better thing to measure. So that's what Leah and her team are doing right now, trying to figure out, okay, which of these many different things we can measure would be most relevant. And we've done it twice now. We've looked. Now we're talking about building a foundation that we can now start comparing year to year. Leah, you might want to tell us more about that.
So basically, with this COE impact study, it's an annual tool that we can launch into our COE program by which we can collect longitudinal data. So that's year-over-year data. So at any given point when a COE enters the program, we're always asking about the prior calendar year's data, so that this way we can start to track trends. And I was just actually having this conversation with your colleague Nick this afternoon. You can collect as much data as you want, but unless you curate the data to tell a story and let it tell its story, you can't. It really doesn't have any value. So there's the ability and the value of collecting data in the first place, but then there's also how do you curate that data so that it can tell the story it needs to tell. And that's really what the COE impact study is designed to do, is to help us tell the story, and then it allows us to then go out there and communicate what we're starting to see and where the opportunities for improvement or where the opportunities to plug quality gaps are. And as Dr. O said, there's always room for improvement, and there's no shame in wanting to get better and wanting to get to 100% and wanting to get to, stage shifting and moving, more patients to that early stage. And so the COE impact study really provides and shines a light and brings into sharp focus what's going on well and where are the areas of improvement. And then hopefully what we're planning on for this year is to hold a COE summit by which we can bring people from all of our COE programs together and start to really dig into all of that data and really try to operationalize what those improvement areas might be.
Okay, so then with that, I would like to say thank you to all of you in the room, all of you online, and of course our amazing panel, Gina, Leah, and Dr. O, for coming in and talking about this oh so important topic and why we felt it was important for all of you to know what good looks like and ensure that you are advocating for yourself and becoming empowered enough so that you can go out and demand, to Dr. O's point, this type of care. And in your community setting, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get it there. So thank you all so much. I'm